Welcome, career champions. Today I'm going to introduce you to the YouScience Aptitude and Career Discovery Assessment and briefly show you how to interpret the results. If you have any further questions after the video, I can share with you the in-depth video that was made for our students. But the purpose of this training video is just to get you familiar with the YouScience platform and prepare you to discuss this with your students. When talking to students about the YouScience Aptitude and Career Discovery Assessment, they may ask you why they need to take it. And you can tell them that it's to help them answer these types of questions. What careers are the right fit for me based on my natural strengths? How can I describe myself and who I am with confidence? What am I going to do after college? And where do I fit in the world of work and careers? Before we get too in-depth to YouScience, I want to break it down how this works. So the core assessment is broken up into 11 short 4 to 15-minute exercises. Students can take a break after any exercise. However, you're going to want to encourage them to not take a break during the middle of an exercise, as it will not save their progress and they will have to start over. You're also going to want to emphasize to students that the results are personalized to them. Students will receive a personalized report that surfaces their aptitudes with matching education and career pathways. These results will also include a bank of personalized words and phrases that can help them describe their talents to others. Again, stress to students that these are uniquely them. They may not think that these exercises are measuring anything valuable that can help them with their future. However, YouScience really does a great job of measuring how their brain is wired and, importantly, different aspects of what makes them, well, uniquely them. Let me be clear about something. The YouScience is not a test. It is not the ACT or SAT, which measures verbal and mathematical reasoning and is an indicator of how they will do in their first year of college. This is not an intelligence test. They will not be given a score. It is also not a personality or skills test. This is not a test that students can study for, and this is not an assessment that compares them to others. There are no grades and no percentile ranks. This is all about the student. This is about the natural abilities they were born with and how their brain is innately wired. With how commonplace it is for students to do everything by cell phone nowadays, I do want to emphasize that it's important to encourage your students to do this either on a laptop or a desktop, as the YouScience platform is not very mobile friendly, so it's going to make the completion of their assessment more difficult if they're trying to do it from a mobile device. As I said at the beginning of the training, we do have another video that takes a deep dive in how to interpret the results of the YouScience assessment, but I do want to give you all a brief overview of the different aspects at which students can use to interpret their YouScience results. The first one being the Discuss Together tab. When students click on the Discuss Together tab, they will be taken to a page that shows them terms that describe themselves, as well as powerful statements that can be used in resumes, cover letters, essays when they're transferring to a four-year institution, summaries for their LinkedIn profile, or even preparing for the dreaded "So, tell me about yourself" interview question. I like to point this out first before diving into the career results, as I feel like this is something that students can utilize day one to improve those aspects. Now we're going to jump into the Find Best Careers section and take a quick look at that. When talking to students, I have found one of two things to be true. Either a student says that the results perfectly fit them, or a student looks at the results and says, "How in the world did YouScience get this? This is not aligned with my interests at all." Regardless of their initial reaction, I always encourage students to look at the profile for the career they're interested in going into and seeing how YouScience says they would fit into that area. They can do this either by going over to the search bar or by filtering career clusters. I personally encourage filtering by career clusters, as I feel this is better at getting the result you're looking for than trying to find the correct keyword to bring up that result. So I have filtered by education and will be going and looking at the college and administrator page. The first thing I encourage students to look at is the introduction to this career using the A Day in a Life and Core Tasks section. I feel this is a great way for students to get a general overview of a specific career and to see how they're going to be spending 40 hours a week. Afterwards, I encourage students to look at other titles this career is known by. This section is really good at going more in depth at the different roles that fit within a certain category so they can get a better idea at the different roles that they could potentially play. Next is the aptitude and interest fit analysis, which takes the results from the brain games and plugs them in to the career profiles. You can see that the purple is the student's personal aptitude, whereas the white circle is the aptitude rankings for this career. Below that is the how your interests match this career. And this is based off of the interest assessment that is taken after the aptitudes assessment. Next, I like to look at the related careers you might be interested in section. If a student is reading a certain career profile and they're feeling about 75, 80% of the way there, but it doesn't seem like a perfect fit, I like to point them to this section so that way they can look at related careers that might be a better fit for them. Below that section is the how you get there section, which just shows an educational summary. For some career profiles, it'll also show on the job training, licensing, and also certifications that students must get in order to work in that field. For some career profiles, students aren't 100% sure what major they need in order to work in that career, and that's where this best majors or career program section fits. Below that is a really interesting map that shows expected job openings and salaries for different fields based on each state. This is a really helpful map, but also one that's a little deceiving at first glance. I always use the example of if you're looking at Tennessee, then most of the time it's going to show a low number of job openings versus states such as California, Texas, New York, or Florida. But what I recommend that students do is for them to go into a state and click on it. That way they can get a more detailed picture, such as the projected 10-year openings, the growth rate for the career versus the average growth rate for all careers, and also a salary guide. I caution students to take this with a grain of salt as it's just a projection, but at the same time, it's a good thing to have in the back of their mind. The final section that I look at with students is jobs in this career by industry. This is really good for students to be able to see the different fields that a certain expert works in. Most of the time, students think of a very specific work environment for the job they're interested in going into, which really limits the job search for them. So I like to show them this section so that way they can see the various atmospheres and environments that different professionals work in. Thank you for watching the YouScience training. If you have any further questions about the assessment or how to interpret their results, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions that you may have or share the in-depth videos that have been made for the students.